Morality is a funny thing in fiction. More often than not, it is certainly a lot easier to pin down, for instance, unlike in real life. In the real world, people tend to be shades of gray. There are people, and in my own hopeful beliefs, maybe even most people, have a lot of good in them, or at least want to be good, but have a darker portion of themselves that they either repress or simply hide from others. Then there are those who are completely consumed by their darker urges, and these I really hope are few and far between, but have some better version of themselves hidden away somewhere. In fiction, things are a bit more clear-cut, such as the case with anime like Fullmetal Alchemist. You have your heroes like Edward and Alphonse Elric, who are trying to regain their former bodies after an experiment gone wrong, and help their nation of Amestris along the way. Then you have your villains, like the 7 homunculi who embody the 7 deadly sins, like envy and lust, who indulge in the death and destruction that they cause. There are many flawed heroes or anti-heroes like Roy Mustang, who is an honorable man but has done many reprehensible things in the past, or Olivia Armstrong, older sister to Alexander Armstrong, who, while good at heart, is more than willing to resort to ruthlessness for the greater good. Also, you have tragic villains like Wrath, who was a man transformed into a super soldier with no idea of how to be anything else, and Scar, who might have been a good man once, but has been consumed by his hate that he's become a murderous monster. But then, there are those who are hard to pin down, those that defy simple ideas of morality. Today, we're going to discuss the character of Solf J. Kimblee from Fullmetal Alchemist. Hi, hello, and welcome again everybody to another episode of Natural Juan. This time around, we're going to talk about one of the villains of the Fullmetal Alchemist anime, Solf J. Kimblee, also known as the Crimson Alchemist. Before all that though, I'd like to invite you all to subscribe to my channel and hit that bell for notifications if you would like to see more content like this. I'd also like to give a quick shout out to Mr. Jonathan Green, my patron and Patreon, and, of course, to Jonathan Banyaga, who requested this video in the first place. If you would like to support my channel and what I do here, you'll find my Patreon, PayPal, and Gcash information in the description below. Anyway, with all that out of the way, it's time we got to know Major Solf J. Kimblee just a little bit more. So you find yourself on a battle-ravaged city, surrounded by ruined buildings, fallen combatants, and the scurrying remains of the civilian population. Quietly, you try to move along, hoping against hope that none of the soldiers fighting the desperate war will see you and attack you. Then, a loud explosion rocks the landscape and he appears. A tall, pale man with long black hair secured in a ponytail. Unlike the other enemy combatants you've seen so far, this one isn't scowling at you or even pointing a weapon at you, but you know he's trouble. Suddenly, he smiles, and now you know you're in for it. He begins laughing, and you're beginning to realize that it would have been better after all if some soldier from the other side found you instead. This, ladies and gentlemen, is Major Solf J. Kimblee of the Amestrian military, better known as the Crimson Alchemist, perhaps one of the most lethal and bloodthirsty of the dogs of the military. To put things in perspective and to better understand the character, we must first understand the context of the setting and Kimblee's place in it. To put it simply, Amestris is best seen as an analog for any imperialistic society in history, from Great Britain to Napoleonic France. Hiromu Arakawa, creator of the series, claims it was heavily inspired by Imperial Japan before and during World War II, which isn't surprising considering the sociopathy found in many of its members. Amestris holds considerable territory, from the deserts of Ishbal and Lior to the northern tundra of Briggs. Amestris is known for its formidable military might, but its greatest weapon are its state alchemists, men and women with knowledge of weaponized alchemy. To elaborate, while alchemy is the organized magic of Fullmetal Alchemist in much the same way there are jutsus in Naruto or the quirks of My Hero Academia, alchemy works on the basis of equivalency or equivalent exchange, in that it mostly involves transforming one type of material or substance into another. Examples of this include turning solid objects into other solid objects, such as a floor lamp into a spear. However, one cannot make something from nothing, and there always needs to be prerequisite matter to create something. State alchemists are those who use their alchemic knowledge to make weapons to devastating effect. We can use Roy Mustang's ability to change materials to ignite fire as an example of this. Amestris has quite a few talented state alchemists, from Alex Louise Armstrong, the strong-arm alchemist, whose ability to change matter into dangerous artillery has run in his family line for generations, and Shao Tucker, the sewing life alchemist, who specializes in pursuits in biology, such as creating talking animals. Solf Kimblee is one of these alchemists, and his knowledge applies to transforming any kind of substance or material into explosives. He uses this to devastating effect during the Ishbal War, wherein he uses his expertise in turning hapless civilians into living bombs. Alongside the other state alchemists, they brought ruin to the monotheistic theocracy of Ishbal, who were actually otherwise benign, through overwhelming violence and left its people a scattered mess. While most of the other state alchemists deeply regret their actions during the Ishbal War, Major Kimblee was one of those who did not, does not, and probably never will feel remorse for it. If anything, he enjoyed the opportunity to showcase his knowledge and expertise, even if it meant slaughtering innocent men, women, and children who were just trying to flee from the carnage. He even openly admits to thoroughly taking pleasure in the bloodshed that took place in the Ishbal War, and believes that it was probably the best time of his life. However, unlike most of the villains of the show, Major Kimblee shows something of a strange moral code. Now, this isn't readily obvious, as he is shown to be quite cruel and callous towards the value of human life. However, he is shown to be disapproving or outright antagonistic towards those who go back on their word out of fear or convenience. Yes, the Crimson Alchemist has no compunctions about killing civilians and even outright kills Amestris soldiers who refuse to attack fleeing refugees. However, he is fiercely critical of military officers with ulterior motives and go back on their word because they're too afraid to accept the consequences of their choices. An example of this would be when he fights back against Pride, even after being absorbed by the monstrous homunculus when the latter tries to become human, since he often looks down on humans in general. And while Kimblee has come to accept that life and existence itself is meaningless, he is never shown to berate anyone for believing in something greater than themselves. He even shows an amount of admiration for his foil and arch-enemy Scar, whose quest for vengeance he somehow respects, even if the angry Ishbalan is hell-bent on killing him. Indeed, he seems to prefer people who are honest with themselves and their personal creed, and openly despises hypocrites and cowards who talk big game, but are otherwise unwilling to make necessary sacrifices. Another strange trait that Kimblee seems to show is his obsessive desire to remember his foes. Gifted with a photographic memory, Kimblee makes an effort to remember all the people he has killed in his long career, since he is unable to learn their names. However, he does not do this for the sake of commemorating them, or even feel remorse at their loss. He takes time to remember them as a part of how successful his efforts in killing them are. It is the amount of his kills, after all, that prove his efficiency as one of Amestris' human artillery. So, while a villain through and through, Kimblee still remains one of the more interesting characters of Fullmetal Alchemist, as he isn't simply greedy or lusting for power. He simply seeks honesty and integrity. And this would actually be admirable if he wasn't such a murderous lunatic. All in all, this only proves Hiromu Arakawa's skill in writing characters that are archetypal but not cliched, overused, or overrated. Anyway, that's it for another episode of Natural Juan. Again, please subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more content like this. Also, you'll be able to find my PayPal, Patreon, and Gcash information in the description below if you would like to support what I do here. Natural Juan